Hey everyone, welcome back to the Leadership Blueprint. I am so excited to have you here. Today is the kickoff to our series called Conversations with Titans, and today's guest is Al Morales, who is a seasoned transformational leader with over 30 years of experience driving change in some of the world's most complex industries. Al currently serves as the Chief Transformation Officer at Avaya, which is a company owned by Apollo Global Management, and that's one of the largest PE firms in the world. And there he leads the company's global transformation efforts. He delivers innovation, agility, improved experiences across the technology ecosystem. Al also serves as an independent director at Smart Start, which is another Apollo-owned company. Al brings a wealth of expertise in financial leadership, tax, and strategic transformation. With a career spanning telecommunications, pharmaceuticals, oil and gas, Al has a proven track record of challenging the status quo and fostering meaningful change. He holds both a bachelor's degree in accounting and a master's in taxation from Florida International University, and he is also a CPA. Beyond his impressive resume, Al is just a deep thinker. He isn't afraid to ask the hard questions and drive real progress. So in today's conversation, we're going to explore how Al actually cultivates that transformational mindset in the companies that he serves, how he challenges outdated business norms and balances comfort with disruption and drives sustainable success. So get ready for a thought-provoking discussion that will leave you inspired to take action in your own leadership journey. Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. We have an exhilarating conversation with Al Morales, Chief Transformation Officer, and we're just going to get right into it, and we're going to be talking about how we actually cultivate that transformational mindset that leads to success in our companies. As I said, we've got two audiences that we're really focusing on today, and that is the entrepreneur who is looking for ways to make their companies more attractive for exits. And then we also have our CEOs and CFOs and C-suite executives who are joining us today and just trying to figure out how do they just get this transformation mindset? How do they cultivate that in their companies and create a culture around transformation? And we have no person better to speak to about this than the Al Morales. I'm so excited for you to be here. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Well, we'll just go ahead and jump right in. First, tell us a little bit about what you believe transformation is, transformational leadership.
Well, I think transformational leadership starts from within, really. To have a transformational mindset, you have to be willing to continue to push yourself and allow yourself to continue to evolve, grow, take risk, fail, win. And if you possess that desire to push yourself, to evolve and grow and challenge yourself into new places, new areas, then I think you can really drive that kind of transformational mindset across a broad organization. And so really it starts from within. But really the definition in my mind of transformation is a mindset. You have to have that mindset. The desire to disrupt yourself, to take yourself out of your comfort zone, to remove the comfort of your life and say, well, I want to do this, I want to take this risk. It's probably going to be uncomfortable for a while, but when I come out on the other end of this, it's going to be worth it. And you really have to be able to drive that mentality and energy and culture across a broad organization if you're going to stay ahead of your competition.
And Al and I have had an opportunity to talk before, and our conversations have always been amazing. You also talk a little bit about what transformation is not, what people get misconstrued of, like what they think this whole big transformation is, and maybe they're not really doing a transformation. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I have real life examples of that where CEOs think that when you are stripping cost out of an organization, that by definition is transformation, and it's not. Cost, for purposes of taking cost out of an organization, can be completely unnatural to an organization, can actually create collateral damage if it's not done as a follow-on to a change in strategy. If you are streamlining the organization and creating efficiency and effectiveness in an organization as a result of a change in strategy, that is what I call a natural occurrence, where cost just falls out of the organization because you're changing the focus of your, could be your customer group, it could be your product set, you could be rationalizing your segments. And when you do it that way, it can be transformational because everything that happens from a cost perspective is just a natural follow-on to that. When organizations find themselves in difficult situations because they haven't really driven the strategy forward, then they start going into cost-cutting mode, which I call hypercare, which can actually create a lot of damage for an organization. So cost-cutting for the sake of cost-cutting is not transformational, in my opinion.
Sure. Hypercare, that is a term that I'm assuming most people don't really know about. Tell us a little bit more about hypercare. What is that?
Hypercare is what I've been asked to take on in several organizations where a company is in real trouble. And you're literally, it's like a patient in triage in a hospital. You're literally taking control of the organization and trying to save the patient.
Yeah.
It could be a regulatory matter. It could be a legal matter. It could be facing bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And so that's what I consider to be a hypercare situation. So for example, if I'm trying to take a company out of bankruptcy, I would not call that transformation. I call that hypercare.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So again, kind of like what we were saying earlier is everything isn't transformation.
Absolutely
We
not.
can't just slap that sticker on something.
No, you can't. But people like to try to do that.
Oh yeah.
And
it sounds
good.
good.
It sounds good. Oh yeah, I'm transforming the company. I took $250 million annualized this year. Well, you really didn't transform anything. You just cut a bunch of heads, and you probably ended up, you didn't change the amount of work you're actually doing, so you ended up doing the same amount of work with less people, which just creates more stress for the organization.
Yeah. 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 Let's go to like that kind of the mindset. Like how does a transformational leader get that mindset all the way down to, from the CEO all the way down to that person who is making phone calls and talking to a customer?
Yeah. I call it the WIFM. What's in it for me?
Yeah.
So you need to be able to share the story, share the vision of where you want to take the organization and why you're taking it there and what's in it for them on the other side.
Sure.
So that every member of every organization down to the ground floor of the company is participating in that transformation. And they're gonna, if you show them where we're headed, if we don't do it, and they don't like that, they don't like where they end up at the end of that story.
Yeah.
But then you show them where they end up with the new story, if we go and pursue this, and you show them what their role needs to be to help it be successful down to the ground floor, then you can be very successful in motivating the rest of the organization to drive that forward. But you've got to show them what's in it for them.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is you said that this leader has to show them the story and what's kind of on the other side of that door. Well, it sounds like first they have to know what's on the other side of that
That's
door.
right.
And then also they have to know, that employee. They have to know that person and know what motivates them.
Absolutely.
There's there's only so much time in a day. How are leaders, the people that are listening today, and they're thinking, oh my goodness, like how am I going to do that? And I've also got to run a business and I've got to talk to all of my employees. What do you say to that?
Well, it starts layer by layer in the organization. And the CEO or the founder, in this case, entrepreneur, they brought on an executive lead team. You've got to start at that layer.
Okay.
Where the CEO needs to understand the biases in the room of that executive lead team. And what you want to create is a unified front at that layer so that then that can percolate down into every layer of the organization. And if you do that, you take the time to understand the biases in the room, pay attention to the nuances, have the organizational agility is what I call it.
Yeah.
To understand the room and ensure that you've got an alignment but not dissonance in your leadership team, then that leadership team can drive it down further into the organization as far as it needs to go. So, but it has to start at that layer.
And what does that look like when a leader, CEO, entrepreneur, founder of a company sits down with that layer, and how does that person hold them accountable to that?
First and foremost, the leader or founder or CEO has to listen to that executive lead team and develop the strategy in a collaborative manner, but not in a command and control. You want that feedback.
Yeah.
If the leadership team as a whole feels that they are participating in the design of that, then they feel like they have a piece of ownership of it. That's what drives the accountability.
Bingo. I mean, seriously, we're talking about buy-in, and what you're saying is the way to get buy-in is for people to be involved in the process,
right,
and for people to feel like they have skin in the game somehow.
That's right. Yeah, command and control doesn't work.
Yeah.
And you have command and control leaders out there. Or worse, you have command and control CEOs who disguise themselves as a collaborative CEO. But then the rest of the team, so they spend all this time collaborating, driving, discussing the matter, but then the CEO goes and makes his own decision without, and they all feel like we just wasted our time.
Yeah.
We thought we had skin in the game, but at the end of the day, he didn't listen to us, or
Right.
she didn't listen to us.
Yeah, yeah. That's probably pretty common for people to kind of, walk through this as a kind of just, hey, I'm just going to walk this through, but not really mean it.
Right.
And that's kind of goes back to what you were saying at the beginning, is transformation has to be from within.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, let's go into what you do as a transformation officer. How does it feel going into a company, as you have done many times, and saying, hey guys, like there's a big change that has to happen. How does that feel for you?
Well, first, I think it's important for anyone out there who may be a chief transformation officer or entertaining becoming a chief transformation officer. It doesn't actually work that way. If you are a transformation officer or entertaining becoming one, the first thing you have to do is understand what is the CEO's vision. And first and foremost, is that CEO bringing on a transformation officer because they believe they need one? Or is that CEO bringing on a transformation officer because the board is imposing it on them? If you get wind that the CEO is bringing a transformation officer on board because the board is forcing it on them, I would stay no less than 200 yards away from the building.
No less.
No less. You don't want to be there.
Yeah.
Because in my experience, and not only my own personal, but in other transformation officers that I've met along the way, if it's not gelling, if the sun shines between the transformation officer and the CEO, that friction and those gaps are going to percolate throughout the rest of the organization, and it will disempower the transformation officer.
Sure.
The transformation officer won't be effective in their role. But if the rest of the organization is seeing the transformation officer as driving the vision forward and the execution of that vision for the CEO, and there's complete alignment on that, then the transformation officer is going to be very effective. Yeah. So to answer your question, I'm coming in to serve and drive the execution of the CEO's vision.
Sure.
My job is also to highlight where those gaps in the organization are relative to the pain points, where the inefficiencies are, inform the CEO, and then get the authorization to move forward with a series of initiatives through a very organized playbook. Through what we call a program management office, and there's a lot of rigor to it. You have very detailed initiatives that have to be outlined. You have to establish initiative owners, and that's how you drive the accountability into the organization to execute.
Yeah.
And so, without that rigor, without that repetition, without that regular cadence of follow-ups, things just fall apart.
Sure.
And so, a lot of what I do and my teams do is ensuring that we're maintaining the accountability mechanisms in the organization to deliver on these initiatives that are ultimately going to deliver the value for the organization in following on that strategy, but not doing anything unnatural.
Right. I'm listening to you talk about like the idea of a chief transformation officer coming into a company. What about some of my listeners who they don't have that luxury? They're going to have to assign this role to someone who might already be there as a part-time role. What do you think about that? Like, is that going to work, or do they really need to get a fresh set of eyes on the transformation?
There's no one size fits all
Okay.
for how to drive a new strategy or change in strategy and transforming the company. I've seen situations where a chief operations officer takes on that role.
Sure.
The challenge that you have and the risk that you face as a CEO, entrepreneur, is that if you are counting on someone who's been with the organization for a very, very long time to go and drive this change, the risk is that that person is going to be defensive about holding on to certain sacred cows, if you will, in the organization, and it's just not going to be as effective, versus bringing someone from the outside, maybe even from a different industry, to ask the challenging questions, to ask the dumb questions.
Yeah.
And thereby bring that outside in look, say, well, that's not really ideal. So for example, when I stepped into the pharmaceutical industry, I had no pharmaceutical background. But that's exactly what Fred Hassan wanted at Schering Plough back in 2006.
Yeah.
He wanted people to come in from outside of the industry to bring that fresh perspective and challenge the status quo of the industry. And I think it's the same for transformations. I think bringing someone from the outside is going to be more effective 9 times out of 10 than relying on someone who's been with the organization for an extended period of time.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I think that a lot of CEOs, entrepreneurs, that cost is a big issue, and so it's like balancing the risk of going out, bringing someone in to help with this, or tacking it on to someone else's job. And I mean, it sounds like what you're saying is the cheap way may not be the way to get to what you're really trying to get to, which is a full transformation.
So you mentioned the word risk. Well, risk is a component of transforming a company.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to take the risk of disrupting the organization. Of course, you're trying, through a transformation office or transformational leadership, you're trying to avoid disruption as much as possible. But to really transform a company, you need friction and you need lubricants. And so the analogy I would make is a race car. If a race car is going to go down a track as fast as possible, you need both. You need brakes and you need lubricants to get speed.
Yeah. Because
if you don't have the brakes, you're going to crash.
Yeah.
And so you have to know when to put on the brakes, when to accelerate, and that is something that you have to be willing to do as a CEO or a founder, because anytime you're trying to change the status quo of the company, approach an inflection point on how you're going to drive the business forward, it is risky. And if you're not willing to take that risk, you're probably not going to survive.
That brings me to a quote you've said before, which I love, and it is to bring comfort to the afflicted and bring affliction to the comforted.
That's correct.
Talk a little bit more about that.
Former boss of mine at a large telecommunications company used to say that all the time.
Yeah.
And really, it's about, as a transformational leader, and never mind transformational officer, but if you're a transformational leader in an organization, you have to push the organization.
Yeah.
And you have to create discomfort. But if you create enough discomfort where the person is no longer motivated, then you're going to lose the horsepower. So that's where the comfort comes in. It's like, okay, no, I don't want you to break. I want to support you. How can I help you move forward to the next stage? And so that's where that saying comes from. It's a little bit like friction and lubricant.
Yeah.
It's you've got to apply the brakes when you need to, and you've got to accelerate and push hard when you're on the straightaway. So it's that same ebb and flow.
Yeah. That's just golden for a leader to look at it that way, very, very simply. Like, are you comforting? Are you afflicting? And you really need to be doing one of either.
All the time.
Yeah, when you're in.
Sometimes I have to do both in the same day with the same person.
Sure. Yeah.
Because otherwise you lose your balance.
Yeah.
And you're causing the other person to be out of balance.
Yeah.
And this is a bit of a gymnastics play.
Yeah.
If you lose your balance, you fall off the beam.
Yeah.
You don't want to create that for anyone in the organization. You have to drive hard for results, but you also have to be compassionate.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody's dealing with something. You have to be tough on results, but compassionate. I learned that from Douglas Conant. He was the CEO of Campbell's Soup for 12 years.
Okay.
And I went through his leadership program many years ago. And that's what he used to say. You've got to be hard on results, but you have to be a compassionate leader.
Man, that's a soundbite. I'm going to take that and put that somewhere. I love that, Al. Let's pivot to the thing that everyone's talking about, which is remote work, hybrid work. We've got other words for it, like distributed work, that people are talking about. Some people are driving their employees back into the office. Some people are fully remote. What are your takes and what are you seeing right now in your world on that topic?
I think it's industry specific. I think if you are a SaaS company and you're developing software, and naturally you typically have a cluster of people that are probably more effective and efficient in agile development when they're in the lab together. But there are many functions within an organization that simply don't need that day-to-day collaboration, but when necessary are using more of a whole-telling approach. And so I don't think there's one size fits all. I do think it's not only industry specific, but it's also functionally specific within an organization.
Sure.
And you should, if you want to be efficient as possible with your use of real estate, and I run real estate at my current company, you want to go as far as digital first as you can for those functions where it makes the most sense, but where it doesn't, bring people together.
Digital first. Like I said, there's a lot of words that we've been using: remote, hybrid, distributed. Digital first. I really like that. Tell us a little bit more about what that means.
Well, it just means that you're taking advantage of what we call unified communications to the extent possible.
Okay.
You're using Teams, you're using Zoom.
Yeah.
And it's much easier to bring 90 people together on one Zoom or Teams call than it is to get 90 people from around the world together in a meeting room.
Yeah.
Think about the costs associated with long haul airfare, hotels, car transportation. If you're going digital first, you're effectively pursuing a much more efficient model for communication. Is it as effective as person to person? Not necessarily. But it really depends on circumstance.
Sure.
There are times when you definitely want to get the people on the planes and get them in the room. It just depends on I think, the importance and severity of the subject matter that you're really driving home with the organization.
Sure. Yeah, and in that same vein, AI is something that is driving a lot of that collaboration and making it easier for us. How are you seeing AI play out in the work that you're doing in transformation?
Well, in the company that I work for, we support the technology that supports the contact centers for 90,000 clients around the world.
Wow.
Contact center is, you pick up the phone, you call American Airlines, you call Southwest Air. Person on the other side of the line, you probably get a digital prompt first, which way to route the call, you get routed, a human being answers the phone. At least with respect to that area, that industry, I think AI will make a profound impact on reducing the amount of human touch that we are going to be experiencing in the future. But it's not there yet. But it's certainly, I would say within the next 5 years, it will have a dramatic impact on the amount of humans that are occupying what I call seats in supporting contact centers. And I use that as an example. With respect to the financial industry or the financial auditing services industry, you can expect to see AI being leveraged in a meaningful way in helping create efficiency in audits, identifying anomalies in the financial numbers that maybe a human might not be able to pick up on as fast.
Sure.
That will potentially lead to maybe a significant reduction in fraud, which could have a dramatic impact to investor confidence.
Yeah.
So we could probably talk about AI for an hour.
Oh, sure.
Those are just a couple of examples where I see it having a big impact.
Yeah, and kind of to bring that back to transformation, you talked about less, people in seats. What does that mean for people? That means that we need to figure out, and we all need to figure out, how do we have a transformational mindset where we're changing ourselves constantly, so we're not being replaced. But how do people do that on a day-to-day basis? Like really cultivate that transformational mindset.
Well, I think it goes back a little bit to what I said in the beginning. It really starts from within. Being a transformational leader requires a person to have a mindset that says, how do I become better today?
Yeah.
What other skill sets do I need to acquire to be stronger in my role, to be more influential, to be more effective in what I'm doing? What are the tools that I need to do that? Who can I go talk to? Who can I seek out a mentorship with?
Yeah.
What course study could I potentially take on?
Yeah.
And if you have that mindset and you have that spirit within yourself, then I think you can bring that and broaden that to a wider organization and be influential and be inspiring
Yeah.
to others.
Yeah.
If you're constantly pushing yourself in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. And who's to say you can't use AI to help you do that?
Without question.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go to success in an organization. You've seen so many organizations from start to finish. Some don't finish well. Some have flourished. In your experience in this world, in the corporate world, what has been the recipe? What are some of those things that you've got to get in and mix together to create a successful organization?
Yeah, I think that in today's world, largely because of the speed of technology, moving at exponential rates of speed, if you don't have, I would say, three things that are part of the DNA of your organization, and it doesn't matter whether you're an entrepreneur, a founder, or a C-suite executive, a Fortune 10 company, it doesn't matter. You've got to have the desire to take risk while you're innovating and fail fast. You've got to be willing to fail fast in order to innovate fast. And if you're not failing fast, you're not able to move at the pace at which your competitors are moving, and you will not succeed.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of bringing the transformational mindset for yourself and inspiring others in the organization to be that way, to think that way. Cultivate a willingness to take risk and fail fast.
Yeah.
Those three things.
Yeah. So failure and risk are not things that come naturally to us as humans.
Not at all.
We want comfort. We want to know what's happening. We want to know what's going to happen tomorrow. It's just the way that we are wired as humans. What are some things that, small things that we can do to kind of take, one step into that risk-taking world, just to kind of get started? Like, if I want to start being a better risk taker tomorrow or today, what should I do?
Bring in a new idea to the company that is controversial. Bring a new idea to a company that you're part of that will probably upset someone because you're potentially moving their cheese.
Yeah.
That's risky.
Yeah.
It's risky for yourself, but it's a great way to test the organization as to whether you actually want to be a part of it. Because if you're going to get tissue rejection by bringing new controversial ideas that upset the apple cart of the status quo, then that's probably not the right place you want to be.
Yeah.
So I would start there.
Okay. Yeah, and I think too what you've said here is a mouthful of, like, it's not just going in and standing on top of the table and doing something crazy. No. That's risky, sure. Yeah. But what you're talking about is going home, researching an idea, researching something that might be controversial, putting some effort into that, and then bringing it. That's a risk, but it's also a very calculated, thoughtful risk.
So I would summarize it in one word. Why? If you're always thinking of the why are we doing it this way?
Yeah.
Why did we start doing it this way? Why are we still doing it this way? Why is someone else doing it differently? Why are they more successful than we are? If you're constantly asking the why of everything around you, you're going to hit something. You're going to bump into something that is controversial, but meaningful in terms of change that can create more value.
Yeah. Wow. That is powerful. So one of the things that I want to do at the end of every podcast is do a rapid fire where the listeners get to learn a little bit about you as a human, not just as a chief transformation officer. So I've got 5 questions that I want to end our conversation with, and I'm excited to hear your responses on these. The first one is, and this is very short, like, 1 sentence, 2 sentences for each of these questions. First one is, what book or resource has had the most significant impact on your leadership journey?
Well, most recently I was reading Transformation with a capital T by McKinsey & Company.
Okay.
Because it really opened my eyes to how companies need to, if we're going to make massive step change forward, you need to bring structure to change. You need to organize change. You need to organize accountability in a tactical way. Yeah. To ensure that you're delivering on the strategy. Okay. So that was very impactful.
So
McKinsey, the last 5 years of 2017, I read that. Okay.
So McKinsey wrote the article. It's
Transformation with a capital T.
All right. I will link that down below. If you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Get into the details.
Okay, get into the details.
I learned many years ago that if you don't get into the details and you can't come out of an area with a mental model that's clear enough that you can explain it to your grandparents, you haven't done enough work.
Okay, all right. And if you weren't in this career of transformation, what would you have chosen?
Well, I chose being a musician first.
Wow.
It didn't work out. The music business didn't work out for me, so here I am.
Yeah.
Naturally.
Naturally. All right. And what is one thing that you do every day to maintain that transformational mindset that you have?
I would say that I wake up every day and I'm engaging with my team and I'm asking why. Why are we doing this way? Why do we have the structure this way? Why?
Yeah.
And if I keep doing that, I'm just going to keep asking dumb questions that ultimately will open a door to new value creation.
Yeah. Yeah. And lastly, if you could have dinner with a historical leader or even a fictional character, who would it be and why?
Yeah, that's a tough one. But one of the most influential people in my lifetime was Ronald Reagan. And I'm old enough to remember that. But I remember feeling a sense of pride and security when he became president. Because things going, the Carter administration during the late 70s was very disturbing and uncomfortable. And I remember sitting in the gas lines with my mom because, you couldn't get gasoline.
Wow.
And so it was a very difficult time period for the United States. And I remember Reagan coming in and almost immediately establishing a sense of calm and security, particularly in the fact that we were in the middle of the Cold War.
Sure, sure. Man, that kind of ties back into that comfort that you talked about earlier and having the balance between, him having to do his job as president, but also bringing so much comfort.
Right.
So, wow. Excuse me, Al, thank you so much for being here. I've learned so much from you, and I know my listeners will learn so much from you as well. We're just so excited to have you, and I thank you, and I hope that we get to stay in touch and continue these conversations. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure to be a part of this program for you today.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely.